Well, it's been a big week in US politics, with Donald Trump signing an order to release files related to the investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. For more on this, Planet America's Chas Licciardello is with me. Chas, it is hard to remember a week that hasn't been big in US politics.
Right.
So on tonight's show, you're going to be looking at Epstein's alleged links with Israel.
Yeah, well, in particular, Israeli intelligence, because there are so many confusing elements of this story involving Epstein. You go, well, where did he get the money from? How does he know all these people? The guy was a maths teacher. How did he end up in this situation? And there has been an email dump from a bunch of hackers, and we think they're Iranian hackers, which might explain why they're so into Israel. But the fact is, the emails, they look legit, and they answer some interesting questions. I spoke to an investigative reporter, Ryan Grimm, from Dropsite about this, and he made some good points.
For many, many, many years, people have been saying, we just don't know what it really was that Jeffrey Epstein did. We don't know where he made his money. We do know that he was engaged in a repulsive level of child sex trafficking. So how on earth is this guy, this former high school teacher, in this position of power among the global elite? What we're finding as we're sifting through these documents and the correspondence is that, he was working on behalf of Israeli interests throughout much of his career. That doesn't mean he was quote unquote Mossad or he was an Israeli spy, but we do know that he was working directly with people who were.
Yeah, so for all we know, he could have been CIA. He could have been, we don't know what organisation he was working with or on what grounds, but we do know from the emails is that he was working with Ehud Barak, who's an ex-Prime Minister of Israel, an ex-Defence Minister of Israel, and they were selling weapons at very large prices to Western African countries, dodgy countries essentially. They were selling weapons to and making quite a lot of money. So that explains where this money came from. He was also involved in arranging meetings with Putin, with various dignitaries, and Ehud Barak himself. So this is how he made friends. Macron, he had personal contacts with, and just with these dealings, this is how he became connected with everyone and had all this money. So that answers some questions.
And presumably more questions can be answered when we see these Epstein files that are due to be released. I mean, there was a point where it seemed like we may never see the Epstein files. Now we've had Donald Trump sign off on them. When might we actually see them?
Look, the legislation says it's meant to be 30 days, but it also says they're meant to go through a process. That process is going to take more than 30 days. I'll tell you that right now. So I would not expect for us to see anything substantial for at least 2 months. I'd be guessing. And then the legislation says that they can't redact people for embarrassment purposes, but that they can redact anything that's classified. Guess who decides what's classified? And so if Donald Trump doesn't want something to be released, it's not going to get released. So then what's going to happen is they'll take him to court, because they'll go, oh, we've heard that there's this document, and they'll take him to court, and he'll say, I don't know about this document's there, and they'll argue about it in court. It'll take years. It's going to be a long time before we get to the bottom of this, I'm afraid.
Wow, a very protracted process.
Yes.
Okay, well, Chas Licciardello, thank you so much for keeping across it for us.
No problems.